Welcome to the GI Podcast. I am your host, Sid Haig.
And I am Tobin Rossico.
And we are joined here today with Dr. Neil Randall. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us on this fine afternoon.
Well, thank you for having me. It's Friday, and we should do something like this each Friday.
We should. For those of you who may not know, Dr. Neil Randall is the Executive Director of the Games Institute, and he has been on previously. So I want to open with a different question than the standard one that we usually ask our guests. What are the types of games that you're playing right now?
Right now, I just started playing New World with my daughter. We've finally stopped playing Lord of the Rings online because we realized there's a certain point where, I'd done that, been there, and so we want to try something different. So we got that lined up, and which one? The DC one, which I think we're looking at that, and then we'll figure what else we can do.
So how many haven't you tried?
What, games?
Yeah, like have you done like Guild Wars 2? Have you done Final Fantasy 14? Because I
no,
feel like
I haven't. There's a lot I haven't tried.
Okay.
Because
it's just been LOTRO.
I've vastly more that I haven't tried than I have.
You did LOTRO, LOTRO, Star Wars.
Yeah, Elder Scrolls.
Right, that was
Did that for a long time.
Mm.
I play some by myself, but I've kind of stopped soloing MMOs, and I get into it. I mean, my daughter and I play whenever we can, and she's got that young child problem and things like that. Not that she is one, that she has one. And so we get together whenever we can, and so I do that, and I do. I'm doing a lot of old-fashioned hex and counter board games, war games, mostly through the Vassal system, which is kind of a replicator of board games online.
Right.
And then I'm collecting games from Steam with a sale and things, so that I can have a lot of grayed out, not ever played Steam games on my list. But
that was going to be the follow-up.
I'm still waiting for a bunch of stuff to go on sale, like Hogwarts and stuff like that, and so I could try to see what it's like. And I'm aware of problems with that IP and everything, but the fact is, they've still got pretty good notifications of what it's like. So I'll get into that but other things and see what's coming up. What's the other one the science fiction one that
Starfield?
Yes, getting on.
Oh,
the
the
buzz.
next.
So I'll probably be giving that a
The next
shot.
big Bethesda game.
And I'm just hoping it's not like the experience I had with what was the procedurally generated world one that
No Man's Sky.
Yeah, No Man's Sky. That's the one which I bought full price.
Like day one?
Yeah,
Day
one.
one.
Wow.
Oh.
That was such a weird summer of gaming.
It was.
It was Pokemon Go, No Man's
Oh
Sky.
my word! It was Pokemon Go.
And there was
summer.
like one other one too, right? So like the landscape of games completely shifted, and then we realized how broken everything was.
Yeah, and
was.
then No Man's Sky was wonderful until it wasn't.
Yeah.
And then it stopped being anything. But I understand it's much better now, and I should get back into it. So
Well, there was like a major update like 1 or 2 years after launch that everyone was just like, oh, now this is what the game should have been at launch.
And then I think another one like 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So they're still trying to right the ship.
well, that's fine
sense.
though. I don't mind doing that. I mean, it's if there's enough behind it that can actually make those shifts, that's important. Because I think we've stopped thinking of games as being finished out of the box or once they hit launch. And that may be wrong to do, but on the other hand, there is the possibility that they'll be responding to more and more user feedback and player feedback and actually, morph these things into something that's much more palatable.
I play. It's really old. It's called Dungeon Defenders.
Yeah.
It's in your Steam library, probably.
I think it's one of my grayed out ones on the Steam list.
Yeah. They've been actively patching it all year, and they just released a new character class yesterday.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? And like it's selling well because it's reviewed well on Steam.
Well, but
People
it has to sell well, or they can't patch it, and that's it. That's the buzz about these things, right? We all want them to fix everything, but you can't keep people working for nothing. Obviously, I mean, you get the money you brought in originally,
Right.
but hopefully we can. I guess that's what we're trying to sustain now is that kind of games culture, that games climate that we just didn't have before. You used to get the thing, and that was it, and the major patches or version 2. Which is a new purchase, right?
Have you heard some stories of like Nintendo games being broken and what they did to patch stuff?
Yeah, I've heard some.
Do you know? Can I share a couple?
Well, I
speaking
know
of
like
this?
the last Pokemon that they released. I forget what it was.
Scarlet
Scarlet and Violet. I know a lot of people weren't happy with it.
I'm
just
talking
because-
like the cartridge era.
Oh, the cartridge era. Oh no, I only know about the modern era.
So the big one was Pokemon Emerald, like that generation, so Gen 3. They had in Gen 2 they introduced berries, right? So you walk around, you pick berries. In Gen 3 you replant them and then they grow.
Oh, you replant them.
And you would plant them and they wouldn't grow. There was a bug that caused them to not grow.
Oh dear.
So what you had to do was either mail your cartridge to Nintendo right? So you could be without it for 1-2 months. But then if you did that, you would get like some Pokemon and bonus items. But remember the days of at least my childhood, you would go to like Walmart or Toys R Us, I guess would be the other main one, and they'd have the kiosks. You'd plug your cartridge in, you'd turn it on, and it would upload the patch.
Right.
And then you'd take it out.
Interesting.
Like, isn't that fascinating?
That is very
that's what you had to
fascinating.
do back then.
I remember stories about that, but I haven't experienced it for a long
Yeah.
time. I don't ever
It's,
got it,
that's
yeah.
such a lost, like, weird experience that we're probably never going to get again.
Yeah.
Definitely not, because it's also just like because I'm thinking more of the difference of like say the AAA games, like the really big ones, of how many
The Red
years.
Dead Redemption 2.
Oh yes, exactly. How long they take in development now, because they're basically saying, "Oh, we're already trying to make games for the next generation of consoles." Like that's how long
Yeah.
the development cycle lasts.
That's Cyberpunk's
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah,
and
not
all that
only
stuff, right?
are people expecting a high quality game on release, but they're also expecting a very immersive multiplayer experience that goes along with, say, the single player campaign,
Yeah, it's
which
almost like
is a lot to produce and deliver.
the Venn diagram has too many circles in it.
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Instead of just being like, hey, here's Fable,
Mm-hmm.
go play Fable. It's like, here's Fable, and you can play with other people,
Mhm.
and you can, it's a farming sim and all that stuff as well.
Mhm.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and it won't abandon you at some point in the early going.
Yeah, if you can't keep up. That's why I don't play a lot of these games. It's like they have seasons and they have, those
The
kind of
battle
like commitments.
passes and all that kind of stuff, which is just like, it's interesting to think about the terrible development cycle of what happened with Overwatch 2, because there was so much they promised
Everything fell
on
apart.
launch, but then they immediately nixed so much behind the scenes that we only just found out like this year, of being like the promised and awaited single player type situation they
Right.
were promising for Overwatch 2. That got nixed in like 2021, 2022, like over like so long ago, and we just found out about it now, and it's just like so much stuff that's promised that just doesn't come to fruition for whatever reason.
So when you play MMOs, are you trying to keep up with the Joneses, or are you setting your own pace and saying, that
We're setting
we're
our
3
own pace.
expansions behind, but we're gonna just keep on trucking?
No, I don't. We don't even. I mean, very, very rarely do we get into something when it's first released.
Yeah.
We did for a while.
Is it because you got burned too many times? You're
No,
like,
it's simply life.
yeah.
I mean, the big difference between me having a son-in-law and a daughter who are playing games all the time, and we realized, let's get together on Friday night and start. They drove down. I think I told you that story a while ago. Or,
That was the Star Wars story, right?
December 11th or 2nd, whatever. No, December 21st of 2011,
Yeah.
when Star Wars was released.
Oh my
The Old
goodness.
Republic.
The Old Republic.
And we arranged that they were going to pick the game up at EB Games or whatever it was called then in
Oh,
in
the days of
Ottawa
EB Games,
In
yeah.
Ottawa.
at midnight, drive down all night
Oh.
with their PCs.
Oh my. But
And then because they were going to stay around for the
Yeah.
holiday season, right? And so they were going to do that, and they did, by the way. And they picked it up, drove it down, and we gave them breakfast when they got here, and we set up our PCs and played till about 4 in the afternoon, and set it up. The only fly in the ointment that happened is that they made the game for one of the first times available for download the evening before.
Oh, weird.
And so my son-in-law, who forever curse his name, downloaded it first and tried it out. So we just slagged him for that for the entire holiday season. But the other thing, looking back in the past, a friend of mine who I play these Hex Encounter board games with, we're looking at the past and back in the 1970s and 80s and what it was like to get customer service from companies, right? And that was called, you mail in a question that had to be phrased in a way that could be answered with a yes or no, and with a self-addressed stamped envelope, right? And so you send this thing in, and they would send back a yes or a no answer 3 weeks later, right? So what do you do in the meantime? So you do the only thing you can do, which is make up your own rules,
exactly.
right? Because
Start
it's a board
homebrewing.
game, so you can do that.
Yeah.
But we remember those days when you think, and then you realize you get the answer back, and clearly they put no thought in it. And you realize, why would they? They're all sitting there thinking, just don't worry about it. They'll do it themselves anyway. So, but I mean, customer service, and now you get the thing where if you don't put something out that sings to people, you get slagged online for, endlessly. But so it's an interesting time. But yeah, to answer your question, we don't try to keep up.
Mm-hmm.
At one time we did, but you have children, you have grandchildren, you have all these things, and you realize it's harder and harder. And the other thing is that you're trying to buy things. Like we're trying to buy houses and trying to renovate houses. Well, the $79.99 game is no longer an option.
Yeah.
You wait for 6-8 months and watch it plummet in price. So
What'd you go for a Steam sale for like 50% off?
What was the big one this year? That it's not Hogwarts. It was another.
Hogwarts Legacy has stayed up at a high price for a long time
because they know people are
going
to pay for it. But it was another AAA game. I want to say it was an Ubisoft game because they follow this pattern.
Oh, was it Anthem?
No, that's dead and gone. But there was some game. I'm pretty sure it was this year that it released, and within like 3 weeks, it was 25% off.
Yeah,
it might have been like Marvel's Midnight Sun, something like that.
Or was it some sort of like parkour type game? I think.
I don't remember. But yeah, it's funny how some companies will stick to their guns for a long time.
Yeah.
Because just recently I noticed that Red Dead now is like $20.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like a 5-year-old game at this point.
Yeah, but for the longest time, the lowest it went was half off, and now it's like, I can find a $20 bill on the sidewalk and go get Red Dead Redemption 2 and play.
One time I spent an hour looking at my Steam list.
Oh boy.
And trying to compare what I paid for the game, versus number one, I started playing it, and the other one is what it was worth now.
Oh, right.
And then I got really depressed because there was an amazing amount of wasted money and time.
Yeah.
Because it's not just that you buy the game for $79.99. It's just, do I have time to get to it? Other than that first hour.
Right.
Right? And for me, one of the biggest problems always is it's late at night. I'm tired. I'm going to start to and then you get into the tutorial. And you get through the tutorial and realize it's now, 45 minutes into it. I don't have time to play it tonight. I'll get back to it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And then, so you end up with this stream of games that you say, well, I played it. No, you haven't. I've barely walked through the instruction booklet.
You click twice in it. Something really cool. Baldur's Gate 3 is coming out in end of August. They just announced yesterday that it's been moved forward into because they don't want to compete with Starfield. So that's like unheard of.
Wow.
I thought we were already at Baldur's Gate 3. No?
Early access.
Okay.
So 1.0.
Right.
And so that's unheard of, is that a game is coming out basically a full month early. The reason that they wanted to do it at the end of the month was to have PC and PS5 coincide releases.
Okay.
But they're like, the PC's version's done and we don't want to fight with Starfield, so we're going to give people, basically a full month now, all of August, which I think is really cool. But the other thing that is really cool that I found out about today, or reminded myself about today, is if you participated in early access, right? So you're buying it full price. Apparently the price went up, or it will launch a little bit more expensive when it's 1.0. But you get a free upgrade to the digital deluxe version. So you get a bunch of skins, a bunch of items. You get the soundtrack for free, which will be like 700 songs because the game is 400 hours long. So I thought that's really interesting, especially considering that early access, very different than MMOs and whatever. But like that's now kind of the mainstay in the hierarchy of like AAA versus indie versus, we're still trying to figure out what this is. So I think that that's an interesting kind of pattern that we might see is if you help us make the game better, we'll throw you a bone, soundtrack, some cool skins, whatever. And so I thought that was interesting.
I think the last game I finished was A Plague Tale.
Yeah.
What was
Requiem?
Yeah, Requiem.
That was the second one.
And I found them really cool for a game exactly the same as other games I played.
Just you have rat powers. You're a ratmancer instead of
rat powers.
Yeah.
Is it? You control rats and you do
control rats.
It's
fabulous.
very scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of neat to watch your rats overrun the bad guys and say, I don't want to know what's going on underneath.
You can put 2 and 2 together
Indiana
pretty quickly.
Jones, The Last Crusade.
Yeah.
MMOs. So LOTRO. Let's talk about LOTRO. Why is LOTRO the one that you keep coming back to? Or that you can't get away from? Maybe that's the better way to phrase it.
Because it's the most fleshed out version of Middle-earth there is.
Okay.
Including Tolkien's.
That's interesting. Why do you think that is?
Well, because they got the rights to basically use the books, which is what they got. They
like
got
what?
no
Like
rights
all
to
of the books?
The Lord of the Rings books.
Okay.
That's all they've got.
Yep.
I think they're trying to get the Hobbit books, but
I'd play that.
Nobody's getting the Silmarillion rights apparently, but you don't need them kind of because a lot of the appendices take care of some of that. But,
yep.
But they got the rights to it and realized at that time, it started in 2007, so it was after the Peter Jackson movies. And they decided what they were going to give you was kind of a explore Middle Earth game. And the only reason to play that game, and I keep telling people that, is because it's about Middle Earth. I mean, it's not that good. It's for people who are WoW fans will like WoW much better. It's kind of WoWish in what it does. It's fine for what it does, and we've had a lot of but my daughter and I are both Lord of the Rings fans, so we keep going back to it. And the other thing is that there's a phenomenon that I think we've talked about too, is that once you get a little bit older, you sort of tend to turn to games that you don't have to spend a lot of energy getting into.
Yep.
And so there's a whole idea of I can just get into this I got 45 minutes.
Yep.
I get in, do some actual playing, do a few quests, that kind of thing, and get into it. But even at that, we realize, once you've gone through the Lord of the Rings main storyline, which is, by the way, till the ring is destroyed, and what LOTRO has done is take it way beyond that.
Interesting.
And now you're going back to the Second Age and the story of the dwarves. Now they're going to the story of the elves, and that's all interesting. But there's no ring, and the ring's been destroyed. So what are you actually doing here, right? And so you got the problem. But that's the reason I keep going back to it, because it's just there.
The space.
And then they add something new, some new territory, and I go in and check that out and realize it's exactly like the other territories. Just the visuals are a little bit different and everything. So I got no excuse for it other than familiarity. Because I do work in Tolkien adaptations. That's kind of my main academic field right now. And so this is a big Tolkien adaptation. In the same way, Shadows of War and all sorts of things are Tolkien adaptations.
Yes.
This is one and of course the new Gollum game, which everybody has.
Oh boy, we've arrived.
We have arrived. I was gonna ask what was your favorite game adaptation of Tolkien's
my favorite is Lord of the Rings Online, because it's basically, let's take Middle Earth, not worry too much about the Lord of the Rings story, and flesh it out. So you end up with these fascinating discrepancies that happen in LOTRO. Like you go into Moria, and it's not destroyed yet.
Weird.
And so you actually have to take the storyline through to the point, which is really weird because it was destroyed a long time ago.
Right.
But then you also end up with these functioning areas, which they're villages. There's one big section, which is essentially a little city inside Moria. Then you realize, this is so anachronistic. It doesn't fit as an adaptation at all.
Right.
It shows you what it might have looked like at one time, and that's kind of cool. That's what the Rings of Power TV show does right now. And so you have that taking place, and you end up with, you meet elves and dwarves and people you've read about in the books. You have place names you've only read about, and they get fleshed out, and that's the fun. The reason, Tolkien barely mentions it. Peter Jackson did something with it, but you end up with the town of Bree in the Lord of the Rings, which is this place they go into, and they're the prancing pony, and they meet Strider, and that kind of, and it's seen as a village. In the movie, it's this rainy, desolate,
it's like
cavern.
it's like the small river town you pass through.
Right.
Just happens.
And then you get into the Lord of the Rings Online. It's just this expansive city.
Oh wow!
Where all the services are available. And this
wow.
It's a hub.
It doesn't. And of course, when it first came out, it was way too overcrowded, so it was lagging all over.
Oh no!
And so, but that's why you do it, because it gives you an expanded view with all the characters you ever wanted to meet, all the hobbits you never wanted to meet, but you do anyway, and that's right. So it's fun. As far as I don't know if I have one that I like more as an adaptation, because I still think we're missing something in Lord of the Rings adaptations. I think there's a lot to do. I think I liked what some of the Shadows of War is, Shadows of Mordor, certainly what happened in there. I think there's some good adaptation points to it, but some stuff to me just doesn't sit right either. So I don't know what it is.
Would it be that the kind of sensibilities of modern AAA games that are very focused on combat conflict with Tolkien's sense of storytelling?
I think a lot of that's
his characters are.
Yeah, I think some of the early Lord of the Rings games were actually better, because they tried to stick with some of the stories and show you some of the weird stuff. Anytime you get into a game...
Have you played Shadowfax?
Yeah, Shadow.
You're playing the horse or something?
You're Gandalf on the horse, and it's like an old Atari game.
Oh, fabulous.
And so you shoot lightning bolts at the Nazgul as they run in from the top.
Fabulous.
It's like the hunting minigame from Oregon Trail.
Oh my
goodness.
That's
the whole game.
That's great.
Or you have another one that came out, and they were named after the books, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember. But,
okay.
And you actually have like an encounter with Tom Bombadil, which you have in Lord of the Rings Online.
Weird.
You have in nothing in the adaptations.
Yeah.
Now,
because nobody knows what to do with
is
him.
a goofy character no matter
He's-
which way you look
it's
at it.
it's an interesting gap in the story when you meet Tom Bombadil the first time. It's just like, oh, so we're just
What
taking a
is
little
this?
break. What's happening?
Yeah.
Are they
Well,
gonna
I
break
mean,
out into song and dance?
The Bombadil, and I talk about this in my class all
Mhm.
the time when I do the Tolkien adaptation, but Bombadil was generally a character that already existed in Tolkien's world.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a writer and
Was-
you're
was he in The
doing
Hobbit
something,
then?
you just build something in. If you already got the character, you got some of the writing done, you just put it into the book. Does it fit? I don't think at that point he was that
Yeah, I
worried
don't
about
think
it.
he
At that
cared.
point, he didn't. I mean, it's fun when you read Tolkien's letters and you read the history of the writing of the Lord of the Rings and what Christopher Tolkien put together. Where, like when they met him with Strider, they had no idea. Tolkien had no idea who he was.
That's
It's
so
just-
fascinating.
Yeah.
So you're already there. I mean, originally the funny part is, I mean, Strider was originally a hobbit with wooden shoes because his feet had been tortured in Mordor or something like that. And it's like, but it just doesn't fit. and you also find out, by the way, that until the book, just before it was actually sent to the printer, Strider's name was Trotter,
Trotter.
which is
Oh, yeah, I think
a
I
very
remember that.
unfortunate choice of name, and we have to say that was a good choice not to do that. You know, but I mean, so you're not going to get the problem with the Tolkien adaptation. I'm not sure how game oriented
Right.
Tolkien
Other than the
Middle-earth
exploration.
actually is.
It's
Because it's
also-
just a long walk.
I think it's also the issue of we have so many big open world games that people just really like. So obviously Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Red
Yeah.
Dead Redemption 2, and the first one. That people are just like, do you do full big world and allow people unlimited
Oh,
access
that's
to
LOTRO, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or do you just contain them into one small area and do a much more focused story in one specific area? And both of them can be hard, especially.
But with
like,
that in mind, I'm finding it fascinating thinking about what Tolkien game adaptations might be now that the rights have been changed.
Because isn't there a new one? Amazon's making a new one? No.
a game?
No, I don't think so. Hang on, who's doing a new?
I thought it was Amazon.
Amazon has
Amazon's
started a new one
doing
again. Yes.
another MMO?
Yeah, and
competing
They were going
MMO,
to
yeah.
try, but from what I've heard, their game studio or whatever.
No,
it is
that
at
was
this time-
that was the last one.
Oh, that was the last
They
one.
started a new one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, Amazon's like rolling out the MMOs.
Okay.
But
yeah.
the company that's bought the rights to all of this stuff we think is going to start selling a lot of. So you're going to end up with new TV shows, new movies. I know they're already talking about
yeah,
those.
the MCU of
The MCU of
LOTRO,
Lord of the
or
Rings.
Lord of the Rings, yeah.
You know, and people.
LOTRO.
There's a lot of people are
LOTRO.
a lot of people are upset
LOTRO.
about that, but I don't really.
That's
care.
modern storytelling.
So now that we've gotten to the part of the questionable adaptations of Lord of the Rings, I think it's time to talk about the Gollum game
Okay.
and just like
go
the
have a-
questionable part of like why this
Why does it
character.
exist? Or yeah, that too.
Okay, so first of all, I have to tell you, I have not played it.
Neither have I. I've just seen
And-
so much
but
gameplay.
I have watched some of the YouTube videos.
I bet
and-
that's on sale.
Yeah, well, hopefully it's on sale. Although I'm tempted to buy it for full price just to say, you know what? I just feel sorry for you. I mean,
Just
I
feel
gotta
sorry.
say that for somebody to have the actual guts to say I'm sorry about a game,
Yeah.
kind of
That
the day
was
it's released or before,
this year.
is kind of amazing. But from the very beginning, you had to ask the question, what is a Gollum game going to look like? Like, what could you do with this really limited character, really important character? But think about what Gollum actually did, right? He got the ring. He killed his cousin, got the ring, kept it for hundreds of years, hidden,
Just lived in a cave.
and then lost it. Hey, there's a life.
It's a great video game.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Can you imagine just spending the entire game just in a dank cave fishing, and that's all you're doing?
or you're in the cave hiding from orcs.
Yep.
And then occasionally you're bigging a fish and eating it. Like, I don't know what was
Yeah, they
supposed
could have done like a survival element of that.
There could have been
Ooh.
a survival
Yeah.
game. I don't think there's any question.
Much more of a survival of just like jumping between just not only the orcs but also the humans and the elves that are also just like aware of him.
Yeah.
But it was a weird topic to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And from the first time I heard it announced, I said, well, you clearly thought about something that I haven't. Because I don't know what you would do with it. I mean, think about writing a Gollum novel.
That'd be
That
so
was
limited.
not based on Gollum's early childhood experiences or something, but actually the Gollum that we came to.
In the Misty Mountains.
What do you actually? Yeah, in the Misty
Yeah.
Mountains. There's nothing really to talk about. It's a little bit like having an orc novel.
But okay, so then, because I thought that the way that they portrayed, okay, yeah. I thought that what Peter Jackson did with him, making him kind of like a Two-Face, was really fascinating.
Absolutely,
Because
100%.
he can riff off himself. So I would say just do that in a novel.
The novel could sustain that. I don't know.
But
if
it'd be very
I don't know if a
boring.
game could.
Because you don't have, like, 2 characters is enough. You need a third. So what, like,
But I'm not sure Gollum is a sophisticated enough character to have that fundamental psychology continue on. I mean, you're talking about Hamlet.
that's
Like,
true,
you just
yeah.
basically uncertainty from start to finish, right?
Do I eat this
And there's all
fish?
kinds
Do I
of
eat that
complexity.
fish?
I don't know. I'm not saying it's impossible. And also, I mean, without taking huge dramatic license, right? Because, of course, you could make Gollum into a sustainable literary character.
Yeah.
Because you can make anybody into a sustainable literary character. Just change it. It just, but I wondered what it was all from the beginning. And it sounds to me like it was kind of destined to failure almost from the start. I don't remember hearing anything positive about the game as it was coming along.
The only thing that I really heard about, obviously, when the game came out, was just it was fun to clown on, basically,
Right,
because
yeah.
the game was just hilariously bad, and that was like the only good thing people could take away. You know, you have like your bad developed games that are just like, oh, this is sad to play, but this was more of just it's a communal experience we can all laugh at, and that was it.
Well, that's fair enough, but it doesn't make for long-term sales. I
No,
don't
definitely
think.
not.
So do you think? So, because what I'm noticing is like a lot of the games that are successful do go off and do their own thing, and the games that are kind of forgotten about, well, not forgotten about, because I would say the Return of the King, the game that adapted the movies, was probably one of the most successful games of that
agreed,
console era.
agreed.
And the Two Towers one was also really good. So is it that developers, do you think that they just are kind of hesitant to keep retelling it, and so they want to do the kind of essentially what like Disney Plus is doing to Star Wars, they need to do that with Lord of the Rings to mine and to farm that actual interesting content that isn't just
Well, but if you don't do that, where are the surprise elements?
right.
I mean, that's one of the big problems, right? The Lord of the Rings story is known so well that you start to wonder what can you actually do. Like, I think there is a fabulous game to be done about Gandalf, where Gandalf is the main character.
Yeah.
Because Gandalf is mysterious enough. But that's where the surprise element comes in, because we know that Gandalf was off doing some interesting stuff and then came into the story in particular areas. But we also know Gandalf had a rich past, and he can bring some of those elements in, very much the supernatural, the religious elements of the Lord of the Rings, and come into there. I suspect there's a good game to be done about Aragorn as a main character as well.
Yeah.
Because you have the early adventures, you have the early things that they were doing, him posing as a different name character in, I think it was Gondor, if I'm not mistaken.
He was like, what, Captain of the Guard or something like that?
Yeah.
time?
And so I think there's a really rich game or two series maybe to be done about that.
I always thought the Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor was him.
Yeah,
like,
I
before
think
he
it's a
got
good
it.
point.
And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I was like, who's Talion? But I actually really like the narrative of those games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's that good. I mean, I there might be a game, how well received I don't know, where you actually get to play the Black Riders. That's another option. But
That's kind of where they ended, right?
That's kind of where they ended. Yeah.
I would foresee a rhythm game with the hobbits in a tavern.
Yeah.
And it's like not Let's Dance. What's it called?
Just Dance?
Just Dance, but it's like just
I mean,
the Hobbit.
but I mean, Lego Lord of the
Or you
Rings.
could
is
even
pretty
just
good.
do
Yeah,
like a-
Lego, but those aren't those movies adaptations as well
Yeah.
to some degree?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Anything that has Lord of the Rings right now is a movie adaptation. I mean,
Or you do like a farming simulator for hobbits. That would be a lot of fun.
That would actually, Stardew Valley meets
Stardew
Hobbits.
Valley, but meets hobbits. I would play.
You can
so
still
many
do the
hours.
dungeoneering.
Oh, yeah.
or
Lots
just a
of fishing.
banquet simulator.
Hey, those are coming back into vogue
Being
too.
like, you need to make, this giant cake for Bilbo. Gotta have at it.
Actually,
you need to have 111 candles.
You get to plan the party.
Plan the
Bilbo's
party. And try to avoid all of the Sackville Bagginses while you're trying to plan this
man.
party. Yeah.
Yeah, because at the last few indie directs from Nintendo, it's like tea shop simulators are coming back into vogue.
Interesting.
So it's like this weird like root beer tapper, but it's like teas. Lots of like you play as the innkeeper essentially and stuff like that, which I think would fit really well for The Hobbit.
I mean, the other thing I think there's something rich to be done with the elves in Middle Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Partly so you can actually start to get into the nitty gritty of their culture and their lifestyles, if you will. I mean, some of that's dealt with in the second most recent book under Tolkien's name. The last one is about the story of Numenor. That's it, the island. I couldn't remember the name. And so they collected all the pieces about Numenor from the material that Tolkien had written and put it all together in this book. The one before that, I think, is called The Nature of Middle Earth, and there's all kinds of interesting stuff in there about, you know, how long elves lived and what they did and their development and all sorts of stuff. That, first of all, you can't believe some guy was actually sitting there writing, because really you had nothing else to do at this time, but that's what he did. And so knowing that, I think you'd be able to put together an interesting, you know, inter-elf clash, because you have to remember they weren't particularly nice to each other.
Yeah.
So there's something to be done there in those cultures, and the dwarves too. But I that's one thing Lord of the Rings Online did, is give me too much dwarf.
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel
Too
like
much
dwarf culture is very
yeah,
like we're good.
and then dwarf culture also comes from the cultures we know, of
Right.
course, from Northern Europe. So it's not that interesting in that regard, I don't think.
These new books that are coming out, are they narratives or are they kind of encyclopedia? Almost
Most of
textbooks.
the most recent two are mostly encyclopedias,
Okay.
although, I mean, the Numenor stories are all the stories that Tolkien had written, and then it's heavily amended, and so you get, you know, it's scholarly It's like reading it's like reading a you know, a version of, I don't know, The Great Gatsby with all kinds of footnotes and stuff like that.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
and it's kind of slogging. You gotta really want to get through them. But for the stuff I'm doing on on the Rings of Power adaptations, you know, the Numenor stuff is just crucial to that. So
So when he like I remember from your class, Christopher was very like no touchy about a lot of this
Yeah.
stuff. Do you think that there could have been some kind of success if they had gone a like Robert Jordan route, where Robert Jordan passed away before he finished The Wheel of Time? They brought in Brandon Sanderson. Was there more story to tell, or was the stuff coming out as just like footnotes?
well, there
essentially.
was
World
more
building.
story from the
Yeah.
old days, if you will.
Okay.
But the question always, how much of it do you want? Because the great story was the ring story. And Tolkien's biggest problem is try how do you follow that up? And Tolkien started, we know he started a thing which is set in the Fourth Age with, I mean, Aragorn's son is in
Okay.
in charge
That
of
sounds
Gondor.
like a great that's like the prototypical fantasy follow up.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
and he
here was
couldn't
the big battle we won. 300 years later.
yeah, but he couldn't sustain it because he said it's cheapening the first battle
Right.
for one thing,
Oh,
because you destroyed the big bad. The evil is gone. So
Yeah,
what you end up doing is kind of a cheap imitation. He said he couldn't avoid things like he ended up with kids who were playing as if they were orcs, like they weren't in the playground being orcs, like dressing up as orcs. And he's like, this is just get silly. So he only got, I don't know, 30, probably 80 pages into it. For me, that's a novel. For him, that's like Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, exactly.
And and it's published. You can read it.
Okay.
And you realize it just wasn't going anywhere. But of course, they never made it go anywhere either. So,
I mean, people would probably argue that Lord of the Rings never went anywhere either.
yeah. But where you could do is a whole bunch of stories about the island of Numenor. You could do a whole bunch of work set in the early Second Age and certainly the First Age, because those are the stories we have, which are, I think, 3 novels. Which there's Baron Luthien, there's The Fall of Gondor, and I can't remember what the other one is. And those are full-fledged narratives that were drawn from the book. They've all been written. So if you bought them, you've bought them like 3 times now. But that's perfectly fair. And certainly you could have brought somebody in to work on it. And I still don't think that's off the table. Like, now that the rights are in different hands, I think that
Coming next
possibility
summer,
of bringing them in is certainly there. You got to watch what happens. I mean, they tried to do, follow up the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and rewrite the final book, because Douglas Adams was never particularly happy with it. That didn't work. I read it and it was horrible. I can't remember what it was called. But I mean, you got to watch what you do, I suppose. But the one thing we know about, those kinds of intellectual properties is they will sustain a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at some of the work that's been done on Star Wars, and some of it's very, very good. Some of it people hate, but it hasn't impacted the original movies.
Right.
It
At
really
all.
hasn't.
I don't think you're ever going to do anything to Tolkien's work. That's one of the things that online you read the social media responses to the Rings of Power show, and they're also they're corrupting Tolkien. No, I mean, yeah, I have my problems with it, but you're not going to hurt the original. That's all there is to it. It's there. It's there to stay. So adapt what you want.
Is this a good point then to talk about the idea of source text?
Go right ahead.
Okay, how do you approach that?
The source text?
Yeah, in a way from... No, I won't do it. From a way that...
Am I close enough to the microphone, by
Sure.
the way? Okay.
Perhaps another author who can't really leave their property alone. Was Tolkien like that, where he kept adding? So was he adding or was he changing? So my question is he already messing with the source text enough that you now have like this elastic ball of things that he kept adding and adding and adding? Or is it like when you do your work, you look at the three? Because I don't think you like The Hobbit, right?
I'm not a big Hobbit fan. That doesn't stop it from being a source
Right,
material.
it's necessary. Yeah. And you've mentioned the Numenor book and stuff. So
I think Tolkien kept writing.
Okay.
And Tolkien was writing. I mean, The Lord of the Rings was not the first stuff he wrote. He'd already been writing, and he'd written much of the Silmarillion before he even started on The Hobbit. And then he got into The Hobbit. And this is all in work. Like, this is a life. When you read about this author's authorial life, it's really fascinating, and one I just simply can't even fathom. Like how you keep doing it over and over and going back. I mean, one of the great stories about Tolkien and the way he worked is that there are literally 4 versions of the Galadriel story.
Oh my goodness.
Fabulous.
Right? Because he was never satisfied with the way it, and they ended right till the end of his life, very a year or two before he died, he wrote another version of the Galadriel story. Now, part of me thinks this is fascinating and try to come up with the Galadriel. The other thing he wants me to say, you're making this up anyway. Why don't you just decide on one of them, right? But he did this all the way through. I mean, there's a story at the end of the Lord of the Rings where if you read through Appendix B, which is the Tale of Years, at the end of which we find out what happened to each member of the Fellowship. Okay. And at the end of this, one of the very last entry is that Aragorn finally dies, LSR, and Legolas, it says, built a great ship in Ithilien and sailed oversea, and with him went Gimli the dwarf. And so that's the last entry. That's the last thing in this thing. And then he writes in a letter that he doesn't quite see how that would have happened, how Gimli would have actually left Middle-earth and how he'd been allowed to. And going, you made this up. Like,
you don't even think about
what are you looking
specifics.
for here? But that's the fascinating way. For him, the verisimilitude was so strong,
right,
that he saw himself, I think, as actually treating this as a mythology, and not as a set of stories that you're just inventing. So I guess where I'm coming in on this is that he was constantly reworking things, constantly rethinking things. And I don't know if he ever would have come back to the Lord of the Rings itself. It seems highly unlikely, because he was much more interested in the First Age and the ancient Elvish stories and that kind of, and even the stories of the gods, which the Silmarillion starts with. So that's, I think, where his heart was. But what that does do is open up the field to other people contributing. He said in a couple of letters he saw this as a mythology that others would contribute to. So it's right there. You know, do what we want. And if you look at what's happened to, the stories of Greek mythology, they had so many different versions from some of the great poets, some of the lesser poets, and novelists and playwrights, that you realize that's how these things work if you let them go far enough. So Christopher Tolkien was against any changes, certainly. We don't think Christopher Tolkien liked anything, but Christopher Tolkien also kept the whole thing alive by publishing the unpublished work. And I don't even know how J.R.R. would have liked that. Yeah. Very few authors want their unpublished work published.
Well, I know that's what happened, I think, with Terry Pratchett, is his last thing was just destroy anything I have that I don't have published, because he did not want it to be out there.
So they respected
they steamrolled his hard drive, and they respected his wishes, and kudos to that.
Because there were a number of people who were really upset with Christopher for all through his life for publishing this material. And then movies hit, and he made a lot of money.
And then he made a lot of money, and now it's like, it's the open playing field, yes.
And I'm not averse to that. So
the scholars benefit from it.
Did I answer your question?
I think so.
Okay, good. That was good of me.
I was going to ask.
I mean, the one thing, I know that you want to talk about adaptation issues to some extent. I mean, part of me, like everybody else, looks at everything from some of the Peter Jackson films, the Ralph Bakshi films, to any other of the and even the musical that never went very far, the Broadway musical.
There's a Broadway musical?
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness, I
Yeah.
didn't know
It
that.
didn't last very long.
That's probably why I don't know it.
But and you look at it and say, part of me just say, oh my God, what were you thinking? And I look at part of the Jackson films and think, please, why did you? I don't want to watch this again because I didn't like it to begin with. But the other side of me think this is the creation of a new story for new media, new mediums at different times in history. So, could you have? I mean, Jackson was in many ways very faithful to the you want to talk about source text? I'll get back to that right now. But faithful in the sense of word for word kind of mapping of book to film.
There's like those tent posts that are like, I recognize that enough, and then he might go off a little bit, but then he comes back. And,
but then sometimes he was veered far off course, and I wanted to think, come on. I mean, I maintain to this day that the end of the third movie and the big battles proves to me that he was just tired.
Oh, I can't.
I got CGI. Just throw more.
Have
CGI
you seen the Hobbit movies? That man was really tired.
Well, that's gonna be, there's the example right
It's
there.
also so frustrating because when you're thinking more of in terms of production and TV production has to go into it, I think a lot of people have so much care and wonder for the original Lord of the Rings Peter Jackson movies because there was so much pre-production involved.
Anything.
In the cast, they were all so friendly with each other, and they still are to a strong degree. But you don't get that with the say the Ring of Power series. Like I remember I was seeing so many posts critiquing the costuming and design for a lot of the for the set pieces for Rings of Power because it's just like there's been so much care not put into these pieces just because of payments and stuff like that and unions and it's such a big issue.
Which is another way of looking at it. But actually I like Rings of Power quite a bit, partly because it's an adaptation of stuff that isn't set. Right? I mean, you want to talk about the source material. I mean, it's one thing to talk about. I mean, by the way, if you want to talk about source material, what do you do with Star Wars? What's the actual source? It's the 3 movies, right? And that's where you're going. But in Tolkien, well, we got the source. It's the published Lord of the Ring.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, first of all, that the ones we're reading now is actually the 2nd edition.
Yeah.
So we're already in a different source.
Yeah.
And then you look at the work that Tolkien did before the Lord of the Rings, and you look at how he admittedly drew from all kinds of mythologies and legends and cultures. And you can't even say there is a source. So what do we talk about when you're trying to adapt to the source? Is you're adapting a moving target. Yeah. Right? And as soon as you get into that opens up the field towards anything is an adaptation. So if we sat here and sang a song about Gollum or something like that, which first of all I'd be really surprised. But that we could say we're adapting the story of Gollum. And who am I to say no? And then we decide that Gollum actually started as a South African, cultural icon of some sort. How the hell do I know? I mean, I just don't think we can talk about source from the standpoint, here's the published novel in 1954. Right? And if that's what we're going for, even that's got a problem because we're in 2nd edition now. But at least we get to talk about where that is. But Tolkien himself would have acknowledged fully that the sources of the Lord of the Rings lie far before the Lord of the Rings. And where do you go there? Do you track all of them back? Because they're really hard to track because he didn't stick to them. So the answer is I don't know.
I think it's interesting you brought up Star Wars. So I have 2 points. So first of all, they took Lucas's original script when it was called The Star Wars, and they published that as a comic book, which is really fascinating because it was dark. It was very scary.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
And the second thing is, you're talking to 2 people who experienced Star Wars much later after the original, this changed my life of all those kids in the 70s. But we were alive when the Peter Jackson movies came out. And I would say that in my experience, that probably was as close to that Star Wars experience that those kids had in the 70s that I had in the early 2000s watching this, right? Because it was unlike anything that was done before. You had some Harry Potter movies, you had the prequels to Star Wars, which whatever. But I remember watching it was Fellowship of the Ring, and when they're in Moria and they pan out, it took me probably multiple decades to realize that's CGI.
Yeah.
They're not just running through a big auditorium. Those are computer generated
Yeah.
fellowship members, right? Like that's how ingrained it is in my brain that sometimes I still can't differentiate it because it still looks so real as I view it.
And one thing that is fascinating is the CGI has, for the most part, held up
Yeah.
in Lord of the Rings. And I really wasn't sure when I first saw it how much it was going to hold up for 20 years. And we don't know, of course, 10 years from now with developments in AI
Unreal
and everything, what's
5
going
and
to
all that
happen.
stuff.
But I mean, I was alive to see the first Star Wars. In fact, I saw them in the theater, right? They didn't do much for me. They never did. I was never a Star Wars fan. But part of that was because I saw them in the theater and I was a young university student and was probably not supposed to like them all that much. So you don't know how much that cultural, kind of stupidity actually gets to you, and you end up with snobbery and all sorts of things. I liked them, but I didn't like them as much as like 2001: A Space Odyssey as a science fiction thing, right? And so, I came up with a much different view. And the same daughter and son-in-law I play games with, they're Star Wars fanatics.
Wow, interesting.
And they know all of it. And we talk sometimes about what things they don't like about some of the new adaptations and everything. But those moments of seeing yeah, you're right. I never thought of it before, but seeing the Peter Jackson films would be very similar in that sense to seeing the Star Wars movies. Because, I was always amazed by the fact that the Peter Jackson films were developed and released. So was Peter Jackson, by the way. He was amazed that it actually happened because he couldn't actually believe it. But you have to remember, this is for a book that had been in print for almost 50 years and had never been seriously adapted. The BBC radio broadcast was fascinating in a number of ways. The Ralph Bakshi half adaptation.
That thing is
the BBC cartoons, which is bizarre.
It's a moment of time, I will say, the Ralph Bakshi one, because it's an interesting mix of the way in which it was created, which was partially animation, but also using some real effects that were then shaded onto to look like animation.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it never gets its follow-up sequel. So it's just like, oh, all right, here it ends.
And I remember in elementary school when we did a Narnia summer and we watched one of the early BBC movies, and it was the same thing. There was the real life actors, and they like hand drew, centaurs and unicorns into it, and that kind of thing. I found I think it was on Imgur, the record of some other producer or director attempted to make something. Do you know anything about that? I'm trying to think of the
Lord
name.
of the Rings.
Yeah,
there were a couple of other attempts to acquire the rights and start the process of it going. The most famous, thankfully abandoned one were the Beatles.
Right, yeah. I don't think that was the one I found.
They were trying to buy the rights, and then each of the Beatles wanted to play a different Hobbit.
I think I remember hearing about this.
Wanted to play Gollum. And I can't think of a more disastrous way of introducing the Lord of the Rings to the world. And I was a huge Beatles fan, so I still am. But that was not the way to go.
No.
So that happened, and then I can't remember who the next one was, but there were also some scripts that were given to Tolkien. And he just hated them for a number of ways. And finally ended up saying, we're either going to do this well or we're going to make a lot of money from them, one or the other. And he would have been fine for either, because this is a guy who was constantly at a part-time job marking papers to make ends meet, and not that we would know anything about that. But so there have been attempts to look at it and figure it out. And I still really don't know, other than just sheer, I guess, stubbornness in one sense, and a sense of being too young to know you can't do it. Why Jackson carried it through. Walked in and said, well, he was going to do 2, and he had this thing all written as a 2-movie feature. And they said, well, Professor Tolkien's already done your work for you. There's 3. And they gave money for 3. It's just one of these wonderful stories that, number one, it's hard to believe, but if it's true, we don't appreciate how much that happens with only real plan, and it's quite amazing. And then Jackson did what you do, which is let's gather together a whole bunch of people for 18 months and shoot 11 and a half hours of film, right?
Yeah.
That kind of thing, so.
And that's why I think, with all the reboots and blah, blah happening, there is something unique and magical about that because of the mix of physical and digital. Like when I watched the not early, but like the Disney Narnia movies, when they have, New Zealanders in centaur outfits and they have like a wagon strapped to their hips and they're running with all the other people in costumes, like you're never going to be able to capture that uniqueness, right? Because I know that the next time Narnia is made, the next time Lord of the Rings is made, the next Harry Potter adaptations, it's all just going to be
CGI.
Unreal. Yeah, it's just going to
Yeah.
be Unreal Engine stuff.
Well, CGI Potter's being done as a series now, apparently.
Yeah, it's being done as a series, and I think it's also just within our particular culture of North America, there's such heavy emphasis on it has to be a live action adaptation. So it's like, why can't you do this within some sort of animation film? Because I think a lot of these works, and for a lot of the stories, especially if we want to focus on those more like battle-oriented stories, it would do better as an animation.
Yeah.
Potentially,
It's because it's not a video game,
Yeah, it's not a video
right?
game.
It's not.
But I
of
always
Legends
thought
and
from the beginning
Cyberpunk.
that Lord of the Rings should be an animated.
It would be a fun
Feature.
animation.
Yeah.
Especially now that we see the animations, they're coming from. I mean, everything from Beauty and the Beast was half animated, and the whole Frozen stuff and everything. These are beautiful, beautiful pieces of work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that would work. We need something more feisty, but I don't know. They're not going to listen to me anyway. That's my assumption. But I am interested to find out what happens with the new adaptations of Potter and Star Wars, and we get a new I mean, we'll see Game of Thrones being readapted.
Oh,
yeah.
especially the way the initial series ended. So.
Yeah, well, there's that. But I'm fascinated to see what happens and what they end up doing that is different. And I don't think any of this destroys earlier material.
Mm-mm.
I don't think the Peter Jackson movies are ever going to be anything other than iconic for those who experience them and then a number of people afterwards. I mean, it does fascinate me that they are now being seen as source.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For a number of people, that is the source. And the assumption is, because Jackson did it perfectly, you then go from there and everything else is less. The big problem, the big complaints online about Rings of Power aren't about Rings of Power trashing Tolkien's source as much as Jackson's source. And it's really kind of funny.
Interesting.
Yeah, because just look at the controversy surrounding Galadriel. It's the main character of Rings of Power.
Right.
And doesn't look like Kate Blanchett.
Yep.
And doesn't act like Kate Blanchett. And as much as you point out, well, she's 3,000 years older.
Yeah.
Like, things could have happened in the meantime.
That's weird too, because maybe that's one of the reasons why Star Wars kind of gets a pass is because they were able to keep those actors in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's still weird when I watch, what is it now? 9, 10, 11? No, 7, 8, 9. And you see like really old Mark Hamill and you see even older Harrison Ford and stuff. And it's like, it's very strange to see that. So it'd be weird to, do another version and then you have Kate Blanchett come back or you have Viggo Mortensen come back. And it's like, okay, this is, a part of this is familiar, but the illusion's kind of dropped. I was also going to say perhaps the task is just too monolithic to redo those movies because it's like you have to answer what Jackson did. And because
But there was a proposal, right, to do a series-based run. And one of the ones so Amazon, who are the other two to put to Warner Bros. HBO and one other one put together proposals.
Hulu?
Oh, Amazon, the one that actually made it through Rings of Power. But HBO's, I think, was more the kind of the new Star Wars kinds of movies where you focus on certain characters and everything. But the other one was based on a retelling of it in 3 seasons or something. So each season would be one of the books.
Yeah.
And it's kind of ongoing, which, by the way, appeals to me greatly as an
So it would
idea.
expand that sense of time, or rather you're condensing it into like 2 or 2.5 hours per
But
movie.
the
bringing up that
outcry
more.
online was amazing because
They didn't
you don't
want it.
screw with what Peter Jackson did, right?
Okay.
And I think now this is I'm not saying these people are stupid or thinking this
Right.
stuff, because you think what you think and that's perfectly fine. But I mean, the fact that it's still there and that iconic and that untouchable means that you are dealing with a really fascinating idea. And
Yeah.
that's why I am curious to see what happens with Harry Potter series, J.K. Rowling notwithstanding.
Right.
What happens with the series, because it is a retelling of a series of films that a lot of people grew up with.
Yep.
And they're going to be watching these things and saying, well, that's not Snape. And that's, I mean, Snape's dead. I mean, Alan
Right,
Rickman's
yeah.
dead, so we can't bring Alan Rickman back.
Oh, the amount of actors and actresses who passed away.
Oh, yeah.
It's like there's almost no one except like the kids left.
That brought up the kids.
And
yeah.
Maggie Smith, who's never going to die. Apparently.
No, Maggie, she's there for
She's just still around.
She has the
McKellen,
elixir
right?
of life.
Ian
Yeah.
Ian McKellen's still alive, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So you can bring Ian McKellen back, put him in the same robe. He's like exactly the same. Anyway.
Just less prosthetics now.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, so I listened to a talk from Amy Hennig. Does that name sound familiar?
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, she wrote Uncharted, and she was talking about. It was like an interview, and she was talking about narrative, and she said, we didn't really know what we were doing at the time, but kind of instinctually, we made these games like Uncharted and some of the other stuff like that kind of bite size, where you would do a chapter and it would take maybe, a half hour, maybe 40 minutes. And then there was like a good kind of off ramp.
Yeah.
And she talked about how that now is the main model for stuff like Stranger Things and all the Disney Plus stuff, because essentially what you're doing is you're tricking people into watching an 8-hour, a 10-hour, a 14-hour, a 16-hour movie, because it just feels kind of natural to be like, yeah, I'm not too tired yet, and the cliffhangers are good enough, so I'll watch one more.
Yep.
I'll watch one more, and I'm guilty of binging at least 2 seasons of Stranger Things in one night. It launches, and we just go through all of it.
Yep.
Yeah, I haven't done a binge for quite a while, but when you think about it, people complaining about the 3-hour runtime of the Lord of the Rings films, then immediately went and watched. You write 8 episodes of X,
Right.
back to back to back to back to back, right? And you think, well, I think the difference is you can get up and make toast and go to the bathroom, but that is a fascinating way of experiencing and consuming those sorts of products and what happens. So there, I think, is a way of exploring a lot of old stories, that some of which have been done, but that a lot of them still haven't been brought back and could be. So many of the classic movies could be done as these 3 seasons of
16
8
episodes
or
whatever. Because you have had and shared the kind of unfortunate experience of sitting down and watching all the extended versions. I think multiple times now, right? Or did you do it just that one time? And
No, I've watched them probably about 8 or 10 times.
But like in one
Every
day.
time before I teach the thing, I just go through them again.
But in one day.
No.
Okay, because that's what I'm referencing is that one time where you had it like in the library or whatever.
Yeah, it was the very first time I ever taught the adaptations. Fairly shortly after the DVDs appeared, the extended version DVDs.
Oh yeah, because I think we had the VHS of Fellowship, and then we bought the DVDs of the other ones.
So I got the DVDs,
weird
and
nexus point.
There was only 3 people. There was actually a special studies class. We didn't even have a formal class.
Okay,
it was a special reading class, and there were 3 people in it. And we decided at the very end, we met in the library because the only place I could get a way to show these things, right? And at the very end, we decided the last night we were going to get there on a Sunday evening, on a Sunday. Sorry,
yeah, Sunday evening.
And watch them back to back to back, the extended versions.
Oh,
and
my word.
So we started at, I think it was 11 a.m. and got finished at about 11 p.m.
Yeah, I think,
And,
about 11 and a half hours total.
I mean, it was a wonderful experience, but I have to say, by the end of it, first of all, we were giddy because we weren't like, we didn't have any alcohol or anything like that with us, right? What we did have was massive quantities of food, though, like because we all thought we should bring in 5 times as much as we normally.
There you go, yeah.
And so, but we ended up getting it to the point where, I mean, Elijah Wood could not appear on screen without everybody starting to break up laughing. He has these big eyes, these elvish eyes, and he's so downtrodden, which is the story. But he just started laughing his heads up. And you felt, I think we're missing something here. Or maybe not.
And so I bring that up because people want that, right? Like when I taught Harry Potter a couple semesters ago, and we talked about like why were there not extended editions of those movies the same way there was as Lord of the Rings? Because we all would have bought them. And I shared.
It does strike you as curious that there aren't more of anything like extended. I thought Peter Jackson would establish the standard.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we were talking about.
Extended versions of everything.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen.
No, I mean you have Christopher Nolan movies, which are just 4.5 hours.
Yeah.
Sorry, not movies; they're films, right? And then you have Lucas, who unfortunately went back and kind of Tolkienized the originals and stuff. But that's it's adding like 5 minutes maybe per movie. But yeah, I was really shocked that especially in that era, right, when all that stuff was coming out, like give us a version that's another hour and a half or whatever.
Yeah.
And when I was preparing for that course, I rewatched the first 2 movies because it had probably been a couple decades since I watched them. And there were scenes that I'd never seen before. They didn't really add anything. It was kind of jarring that like, I don't remember this from my childhood.
Yeah.
And then the other part that I shared in that class was once there was enough of these out, me and my sister, who were the big Potterheads in our family, would do similar things where it was like 11 o'clock. We made sure everybody was in bed. And then we would say, okay, we're going to watch all these. And of course we'd make it until, halfway through the second movie. And then I don't remember who killed the basilisk, but somehow, you know, Harry's seeing Dementors and all that stuff. But like, it was almost before we knew what binging was. That's what we called it a marathon, right? We didn't call it binging.
Well, that's what they used to do. Like when they were showing the movies, literally on any TV station, was they had like the Harry Potter Christmas marathon, and it would be playing all 7 or 8 movies back to back to back, and for like 3 days.
When The Return of the King came out, and I think they did this with some Star Wars. I'm pretty sure they did it with Rogue One. They did movie 1, movie 2, and then you would watch movie 3. So you'd see the full thing. Mm-hmm. And with Rogue One, you would watch Rogue One, and then you'd watch A New Hope because they're so like close together and stuff. So I think that stuff's fascinating. But it's like, obviously people are doing that. So why isn't the merchandise kind of matching?
I don't know. I mean, the way, I mean, for the movie standpoint, one of the reason the Jackson one worked is because Jackson planned those. Yeah. Like this was real footage. This wasn't stuff that was just, you know, crammed in
right.
later.
It still had like the bars.
It was actually designed from the very beginning as scenes. So a lot of it was scenes that never made it. But he actually seemed to plan these extended editions. And maybe he just knew that the Tolkien audience would buy it.
Yeah.
And that's a possibility.
Well, and that's what's weird, right? Is like you have Jackson who went so far like above and beyond to prove that he's capable of doing this. Yeah. And obviously it did extremely well. And then movie studios were like, no, an hour and 45 is good. Like we'll be safe.
Yeah, I know.
But so instead of shifting the market, they were just like, yeah, no, that's like
it became
bottle lightning.
It became the exception that proves the rule almost, right? So, because you really haven't seen much of that, and I find that surprising, especially with some of the the YA kinds of titles that could have been done, everything from Hunger Games to the Divergent series and things like that. They could have gone on longer. You know, they left a bunch of stuff up. Potter is a classic. You know, I mean, as long as the Potter things are, I've had people complain to me that there's so much left out. And usually their favorite classes or things like that. And I get that. But, anyway, we work from there. But we're in a fascinating era of adaptations. And part of it's because we have so many ways of doing this. And you're right, the binge series is one of them, even though binging is not quite the fad it was from a television series standpoint. It doesn't even have to be bingey. It can just be, let's take these things. The other thing I find fascinating is that, so many TV series now are like 8 episodes, maybe 10. Mm-hmm. I can remember, when I grew up, it just, a drama series would have 22 to 25 episodes.
So much filler, but it was so much fun sometimes.
Well, that's the thing, but some of the stuff, like episode 14, which didn't matter.
Oh, yeah.
You just have a good time with.
Or when it's like episode 18, they're like, okay, we're going to just recap what happened.
Yeah.
So much. Well, I mean, that's a very like anime trope, but
yeah.
There's a couple.
And then you get a nugget of some sort of overarching story in the last like 3 episodes, and it ends on a cliffhanger. You're like, ah, and then you have to wait like however many months before the fall series starts up again.
But I think you're starting to explore how some of these adaptations might happen. And I think we're in a good space for it from that standpoint.
So we talked about film or, visual. We talked about games. Do you think that there will come a time where we're going to the comic shop on Wednesdays and picking up Rings of Power,
why not?
Tales of Numenor, number 1 of 6, or every summer there's going to be the crossover between
why not?
Whatever. You really think so?
Yeah, why wouldn't we do that?
I think that'd be amazing.
I mean,
I would love some more comic adaptations.
We haven't talked about comic book adaptations. I haven't read a lot of comic books, but I used to.
Right.
And I used to, pay attention to all the Avengers crossovers and all sorts of things. And I mean, it's a really powerful means of storytelling.
If you want to build a different library that you'll buy and never read,
exactly.
Now's the time to jump back in.
Maybe I get all these things on Humble. That's a possibility. And
were there any Lord of the Rings comic adaptations that you can remember? Because I'm drawing a blank.
I don't actually remember. And
I highly doubt it.
I feel
it's so interesting that it hasn't been adapted in some sort of comic
neither
series.
Harry Potter. Like if we're gonna,
but remember the rights.
Yeah, the rights.
It's all about the rights, right? But I don't see why these wouldn't be an adaptation type to explore, because comics tell stories in a different way, and we know that we've seen it. And anybody who does a graphic novels course or a comic book course knows that comics and narrative is a different thing than film and narrative or game and narrative. So I don't see why they shouldn't. And I guess I'm partly surprised that these things too haven't been planned all that well. I assume there's a problem with perceived sales or maybe real sales of the things that have appeared in the kind of transmedia kinds of settings. But I don't know why we wouldn't do this. I mean, I would love to see the Lord of the Rings as a long comic book story, whatever version of it you want. Classic. I don't know where we draw the line between graphic novels and comic books anymore.
But 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Yeah, but I think it should be done, and I think it will be done. I think we have to get past this idea that that film and TV are the two primary modes of conveyance of stories, but I think it will happen.
Because I think it's weird that you have very weird situations where you have somebody like Stephen King, whose novels are extremely long, and they don't adapt the film; they adapt the novel into comics. So you get this equally as long visual experience. Then you of course have the new Spider-Man's coming out, the game, so go read the comic before. And that started with Arkham Asylum. That's a very old practice of go read this comic so you know what's going to happen in the game, and then there's going to be a comic that follows up. It's weird that, I guess Batman makes sense because it's from there, that it kind of sandwiches that experience. But it's obvious that very long form comics like The Walking Dead, or there are some Game of Thrones adaptations and stuff like that, and people seek them out. People would be going, hopefully, with great fervor into the comic shops. But I think it's almost the same problem with the MCU itself, where they make these really great movies, but there's nothing to redirect them back to the source material. If you know, and if you know, and therefore you know where to go. But if you're showing up just to have some popcorn and Sour Patch Kids and be like, all right, I'll see you in 4 months when we go see Black Panther, right? You're following the movies rather than that.
Yeah. I also don't know how are we doing, by the way?
You're good.
You're good.
You're doing great.
No, that wasn't the question. I don't know. I don't think we've trained audiences to skip back and forth either.
Yeah.
So when you get into the transmedia kinds of settings, will people actually go from TV to a comic book to a game, especially a game, because people get stumbled on that one, and then go to the movie.
If it's a mobile game,
they could.
Lord of the Rings Go.
Yeah.
Lord, could you imagine?
Well, Lego
Why
Lord of
not?
the Rings, right?
Feel like you're just going to start, oh no, there's an Nazgul right there. I'm going to battle him right now.
But
Right,
the whole
throw
idea
your-
of wanting to see the story continue across the different ones
I think
doesn't seem to have kicked in particularly well. And I part of it's just a matter of I was trained very young to watch television, how to watch television, by basically sitting down and doing it. And you learn how to understand stories according to that,
Right.
and to watch movies. I was also, I trained myself how to read comic books, but didn't really put them together except in my head, right? So I don't know if that's a problem of simply not taking the time to adjust an audience's expectations and where to go with it. Sorry.
I was also thinking in terms of jumping from one medium to the comic adaptation. I know a lot of people had problems when Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse first came out, because people were like, "Oh, this is such a cool movie. I want to know more about Miles Morales." But how do you get into that when there's so many comic permutations that people are just like, "This is way too overwhelming."
Well, and that's in the comic field, in the podcasts and other creators and stuff that I've talked to. They're always like, "Why is there not at the beginning of this movie an ad saying what you're about to see is adapted from here?" And it's very clearly go start here, and then they can do that.
Yeah.
And they get the really cheap thank yous at the end that don't really mean a whole lot, because those writers and artists and stuff aren't getting residual royalties from their contribution to that.
And nobody's ever read them anyway.
Written what?
The names at the end of a movie, right? The thank yous.
Is it AI
Sorry,
generated?
it was a joke. Never
Okay.
mind.
I was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Edit that one out.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so it almost seems like if they were to do it, it'd be too clunky. It'd be like, you're about to watch a movie, but it's not actually a movie, it's a comic book, right? They're pulling the rug out and being like, oh, there's this whole other field you're not aware of, but now that you're aware of it, you're not going to enjoy this because you're going to just be looking for what's not there. But the last example I'll give is Stranger Things. Very successful streamed show, but the comics are incredibly thorough at building out that world and weird crossovers and stuff like that. I guess there is a game, but it's very strange. Stranger Things, whatever.
Stranger Games.
I'm leaving that one in.
Yeah.
But it's weird, right? Of like, who is this for? What else are they doing? It kind of confounds me that there's not like a new Lord of the Rings board game every single year, right?
Isn't there though? It kind of is.
No.
Right?
The one I wanted to ask you about, and I don't know how far into it is. Have you been looking at any of the Magic the Gathering Lord of the Rings stuff?
Just recently started.
Because
one of my students in my course has been bringing some material in, and it looks fascinating, but I haven't had a chance to look at it now.
Was it you that I was talking to this about, Sid? Where like the characters are not all just white people?
Potentially.
That's why everybody's upset.
Yeah.
But it looks so freaking cool.
It does look
like
cool.
give me the film of that.
Yeah.
Or the comic of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
matter of fact, that's some of the best artwork I've seen.
It's so
good. I mean, the great Lord of the Rings artwork from my standpoint was in the calendars. He used to come out. Every year there was a Tolkien Lord of the Rings calendar, and that's where I mean people like Art Howe who got into the film they got their start in the calendar.
That's
and
awesome.
They were beautiful pieces of work, and also gave you different interpretations of what these characters looked like, right? So you didn't, or what the Ents looked like, what the elves, and so you weren't just tied to that one view that you either get as some weird Tolkien illustration because he did his own illustrating, or the Jackson versions, right? And so you had different ways of looking at it. But the Magic the Gathering cards take that a different level, a different step, and there's so many of them.
Mm-hmm.
So many things are depicted, and they've done a lot of that with it. I'll call it great care.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're careful of, but they're clearly trying to give you an alternative view of looking at these characters. Yeah.
They have a very strict procedure of building out that art and stuff. Like there's some GDC talks about it. It's very, very thorough. The cool thing about the Magic is that they just released like a sample of, I think it's like a 4-pack or something, and it's the Ralph Bakshi cartoon.
No way.
Yeah. So that's like the really special edition of like some of the cast is that.
But they were getting into some really innovative adaptation work, right? Yeah. Where you bring all these things together. I mean, one of the problems with all these has been I think we've kind of hovered around this, is that you can't afford all of it.
So you're just gonna like pick your lane and stay in it.
I stay in comics. Like, Neil buys all the games and doesn't play them.
Well, but think of if you wanted to be in the Tolkien universe.
Like the fandom, you mean?
You're buying all the books. No,
yeah.
I mean, you're buying all the books. You're watching all the films constantly. You're different versions of whatever you want. The games that are coming out. If there's comic books and works, like, what do? You only buy so much stuff.
I doubt anybody who's like, oh, I'm a Lord of the Rings fan. I'm going to go start playing Magic the Gathering so I can collect all this stuff.
No. But I mean, until we get some kind of crossovers of that sort, I don't know if the adaptation world kind of fulfills that dream of multiple ways of looking at the world. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's up to you and which ones you want. I mean, I remember starting to collect every edition of the Lord of the Rings.
Oh, good night.
Then I tried to collect all the calendars, and then
that would be cool.
It would be, except that life happens.
Yeah,
and so you end up having other things to spend your money on, and it just kind of drops away. That's when you go and I won't say this with any bitterness, and you sell 3 boxes of comic books to help pay for your kids' education. Yeah. Yeah,
it's okay. They're not worth any more now than they were then.
No, Amazing Fantasy 15 is not worth anything these days.
Well, what condition was it in?
Decent.
Maybe a little bit.
It'd still be a good $20,000 or so. The entire run of Fantastic Four up to number 40 or something.
Oh well, okay, maybe. Yeah. Is there anything?
I'm not bitter. Actually, I'm not.
That you're looking forward to in terms of adaptation? It can be Lord of the Rings. It can be elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm looking very much forward to Rings of Power season 2. Mm-hmm. I liked season 1. I, like a lot of people, I have some quibbles, but like I also don't have the responsibility, so I can do that. I don't have any care at all that it's different from the Jackson movies. I think that's a fine thing. Yeah, I want to see what they do with some of these. I mean, for me, Tolkien adaptations have to be about the things we can't see anywhere else. I mean, until you're actually willing to redo The Lord of the Rings, and I think we could do with a redo of The Hobbit, by the way.
Yeah, that's fair.
I still think the first Hobbit movie is really good.
Yeah,
I think
because
it
that
is
is The
too.
Hobbit.
That is The Hobbit.
And then who knows what the other two were?
Oh yeah, studio interference.
Marvel Hobbit. Like
Marvel
that's
Hobbit,
right.
yeah,
Like
it
that's
just got weird.
CGI.
But-
So much CGI.
But I mean, so we got the Tale of Numenor, which is a really, really important story. So let's tell that because it's not finished.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And for me, one of the reasons I like Rings of Power so much is because I think it's a more, what do I want to say, more innovative adaptation because you don't have a story you're tied to. You can't just say, okay, I'm stuck here. I need this to happen right at this point. And so we can look at that. I'm looking forward to that. So carrying on with that sort of thing. And I think we can do some really interesting stuff with smaller movies about specific incidents.
Yeah.
And they can look however they look. There are different ways of showing the earlier ages of Middle Earth and all of that. I mean, if we ever get to the stories of the gods and the creation of Middle Earth,
Oh my goodness.
I would find that really fascinating.
That'd be a great video game.
Then
would
that's a
be.
video.
Yeah,
So
that
the
would
other
be a
thing
great video
is
game.
the game adaptation. And I think the board game adaptation has been significantly more successful than the video game one. And I think we can see that moving forward as well. And I haven't even thought about the comic books, but you brought that up. So, and there must be some other medium that I'm forgetting that we could keep going.
A new BBC. Well, no, Andy Serkis narrates the audiobook, so we don't really need anything. But we do need an updated Hobbit. The one I listened to was very much like probably an 8-track that they've digitized.
We do that.
Or what about say like board games? Because the only Lord of the Rings board game that I can recall is I think it was like the Risk version of it.
Yeah.
That's the only one I remember.
That's fine. I mean, War of the Ring. War of the Ring remains decent. The original Lord of the Rings, which I can't remember what it's called. Might be called Lord of the Rings. I can't remember, but we have a really innovative mechanic using fear, the characters' experience, and that kind of thing. I think we have it here, by the way. We have several of them here.
Yeah,
And,
I love video or like Lord of the Rings game mechanics are fascinating.
Yeah.
With how they pull from token, but that could be a different podcast.
So I think, but that's something I can collect here, and I will continue to do so. But there's a bunch out there. Let's open them up and start to play them because they're definitely there.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, as a closing question, if you could hang out with for one day with someone from Lord of the Rings, who would it be?
A character,
Yeah.
you mean?
Or Tolkien? You could hang out with the architect.
I'm not entirely sure I'd get on with J.R.R.
Yeah. Would anybody?
Well, apparently he had 3 friends.
Oh, that's
And they hung
Two
out
more
at
than I
the
do.
pub. And I think they mostly talked about themselves, but that's the point. So
maybe I would fit in with Tolkien.
His constant letters back to C.S. Lewis and it's like, well, this
I
is
could
how I
hang out-
represented
yeah.
you.
if I could hang out with one character
Yeah.
from Lord of the Rings, Faramir.
Oh, yeah.
There's my answer.
All of his
Excellent.
complexes.
Yeah. Other than that, it'd have to be like Treebeard or somebody. And
Treebeard.
then I could spend most of my time sleeping. No, but I think Faramir would be a fascinating character. I kind of too good for almost anybody in the book. In the film, different things. Probably that would. Yeah. I don't think any of the hobbits. Merry maybe. That would work. Oh yeah. I'd have to think about this a little bit further.
Yeah, I'm satisfied with that answer.
But Faramir is good.
Thank you so much for joining us again. I
You're
feel like
welcome.
this was more fun than the last one, but the last one was so long ago, I don't remember.
I think the last one was more about the Games Institute, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
And that's fun.
It's fun.
But I'm here
It's
for
not
reasons
everything you
other
do.
than to run a center. So thank you for this. I appreciate the opportunity to ramble on.
We should do it again sometime.
Well, we should probably do it again sometime and see where we've gone next in the adaptation world.
Sometime after season 2 of Rings of Power.
Do I need to watch it then?
Do you
You
need to
might.
watch it? No.
We
but
should just do a Rings of Power
You don't need to
podcast.
watch Stranger Things either, and you did.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff. All right.
What you need to do is satisfy yourself is watch a couple of episodes to see what the enormous outrage is happening on social media about how evil this is because it.
Oh no, there's a
It
black man as
subverts
an elf.
the- It's really quite fun.
I mean, I love Aragorn being black in magic, so
Well,
by all means,
but I mean,
let's run with it.
so what I've found, and I don't do this normally, but I find myself on social media trolling. I just occasionally say, "Nope." Didn't read it, did you? You know, that kind of thing. Just to, and I don't do that. That's
Call
not my
yourself
way
a
of-
true fan.
All right, you've heard
All
it
right, thank
here.
you, folks.
Yeah, Neil's the true fan. All right.